Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Levantex podcast, both political and cultural. And today we have a wonderful guest. We're going to be talking to Yalla. Let's Talk. They are based out of Toronto, for all of you that don't know. And for those of you that it may ring a bell or sound familiar, I'm sure you're going to be very interested in what our guest, Mace Alwash, has to say today. So, Mace, thank you for being with us all the way from Canada. Such a big time difference, we know. But yes, we've made the time and we're here.
Hi, Sophie. I'm very excited to be here. And yes, we did make it happen. The time difference isn't so bad, but yeah, we're here.
We're here. We're here.
Yeah.
We've done it. It's good. And it's nice because being far away and seeing the light, shining in the background makes me feel like it's still daytime.
I know you rarely see this in Canada. It's a good day today.
Yes. So
Yeah.
positive energy all the way. Now, everyone who's listening, what we're going to be talking about is, again, I mentioned it earlier. It's called Yalla, Let's Talk. It's a platform. And here today, Mace is going to tell us why it was born. Now, how did this baby come to be?
Okay. I hope you have time. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about where the idea came from, a little bit about the journey, and like feel free to interrupt me in the meantime because it's a kind of long
Go for it.
story. Yeah. So basically, Yalla Stock was started by my co-founder Hani in 2017. And the reason he started it is he felt as an Arab millennial, there are lots of topics that kind of remain swept under the rug, if that's a phrase, in the Arabic culture. And these topics typically really truly affect our lives. And you can't really bring them up with like Arab parents or a lot of Arab parents. I don't want to be too general, and you can't a lot of times even you can't bring them up with like young people as well. So he kind of like felt, okay, maybe people need this space to come together and talk about these issues, and these issues are things like mental health, career choices, sexuality, gender equality, any of that. So he really kind of the way he went about it is typical millennial way of starting a YouTube channel. So he kind of like came together with a few friends and they shot some YouTube footage. He didn't end up publishing it for many reasons, but he kind of really took the idea forward, and he approached myself. We're actually friends from university, and he was like, "Let's try to do this." And we talked to Canadian Arab Institute here. They're a great source for the community, and Rania Yunus at the time supported us to start this initiative. And on May 5th, 2018, we were able to kind of bring a lot of Arab youth together. And we had an event where we had a panel of speakers, and we had different workshops for people to talk about like issues like mental health and relationships and cultural
Why
entrepreneurship and
why
all
why
of that.
do you think that it's so hard to have these discussions? I mean, to sit down and think, I've got to start a platform, I have to start an initiative to be able to have these discussions. How bad is it that we've got to this point where you said a couple of minutes earlier you can't even talk to your parents about?
Again, like I think it's a majority, but I definitely am aware a lot of parents are very open and you can talk about these specific topics. But as you can see, and as you can see from the needs of the community to our platform, a lot of them don't. And I would say the reason is probably tradition, not going against the grain. I think a lot like that's something, this is my guess, like my personal guess is our culture is very ingrained into this kind of like, how do I say it, this monolith identity and life path that we all have to adhere to as, let's say, an Arab man or an Arab woman. And there's really nothing in between, nothing you can try to change your mind. I mean, there is some sort of flexibility here and there, but there's that path that was, you have to kind of like follow. And anything that goes into questioning it is typically not accepted. And
Do you think
anything.
a lot of these issues stem from the fact that the constant need to have a facade, or to be strong, or to not feel penetrated? I mean, we talk about the patriarchal society in Western cultures, and obviously women have managed to make leaps and bounds to be able to try to combat this and find equality and have a voice. Now, in a male dominated, I don't even want to say dictatorship. That's sort of like the Middle East vibe. And women, yes, you do find them speaking. I mean, I'm in Lebanon, and the people on the street most of the time, 90% are women. They stand up to a lot. I want to say that their voices are being heard. They're hitting strides in Forbes. They're jumping leaps and bounds as well. Now, when we're having these discussions, we're mostly talking about the youth, we're not talking about the people that are making these breakthroughs. But why is it so hard still to relate? I want to know, like, it's so curious because people that are listening now are mostly the diaspora. They don't necessarily live in this part of the world, and they're trying to associate to both cultures, or they're living in a Western culture and trying to live in an Arabic traditional household. I mean, do you think that's the problem, where they know they should be talking, and they should be having these discussions because they've seen it happen with their friends?
Yeah.
But and you've obviously given them the platform, but what about the Arabs that are in the Middle East? Do you find them relating to you a lot as well, or are they sitting quiet?
So that's it's interesting you bring that up. So I feel like the Arabs in the diaspora and the Arabs in the Middle East and North Africa have some similar struggles and some different struggles. The ones in the diaspora face a lot of identity issues. You have no idea. There is third culture Arab aspect. That's something we consistently have been working on and dealing with every day for the past 3 years, and people still want to talk about it and still have difficulty kind of balancing those two extreme cultures, because when they're at home, they're within the Arab household, they have these ingrained beliefs and values that they get from there, and then they go outside and it's a completely different world, and they're trying to balance and they kind of believe and feel the same way about both. So you've got that here in the diaspora, as well as both in the diaspora and the Middle East and North Africa, you have these issues, the taboo issues that people don't talk about. I mean, when have you heard people bring up mental health in the Middle East? I haven't. I mean, I used to live in Dubai and have friends there. I remember going back and I talk to them about it. They're like, sounds like a very westernized concept. So you
Yeah,
got
well, I
things
was
like
born
that.
and raised in Dubai, and my dad did have friends, that were Emirati, and I don't want to name names here, but high up. And if they did have a child that had a mental health issue, or was autistic, or had Down syndrome, they were like, shut away. It's like we went back to Henry VIII in the UK, like, no, no, you can't be seen, you don't exist. So I do understand when you say that, especially Dubai is supposed to be cosmopolitan, and, a bridge between the Middle East and the West, and Asia, but yeah, it's not as forward thinking as some may seem. I think discussion of mental health is probably more apparent in Lebanon than it is in Dubai.
I would assume so, to be honest. And honestly, it's like you mentioned, it's things like that, or issues like that within mental health, as well as like the regular day-to-day mental health, your well-being, things like that. People don't really pay attention to those things, and I think that's kind of like starting to be a big deal here in North America and the West. People are paying a lot of attention to, being happy and feeling good, and what do I do to improve my well-being? And so these things, like we are trying to like even normalize the concept of therapy in for Arabs in general, or people who kind of like consume our content or attend our events. Like I speak very loud about it. Like I go to therapy and I fucking love it, So it's amazing. I wouldn't do it otherwise. And I try to encourage a lot of people to do that. So it's like honestly, it's things like that that we're trying to destigmatize. a lot. We're also trying to destigmatize things like like gender equality is still a huge issue. A lot of women still face barriers, and don't get me wrong, this is not even Arab specific. As a Canadian woman in STEM, I can tell you I face this every day. Things like sexuality is a huge issue. I mean, I'm as liberal as a lot of places in the Middle East and North Africa are. It's still like not easy, and we're trying to destigmatize these issues and try to really create an inclusive. I think really, if you put it, we're trying to create an inclusive and safe space for people who identify with being Arab to feel safe and included. And we're really trying to break the narrative that there is this monolith Arab identity that we have to be, and you can actually be anything, and we're different, and that's great, and let's celebrate that kind of thing, you know.
Mace, I think it's so great to hear that, and Mike, I have a question to you, which is quite interesting. You know, we started out by saying Hani took the millennial route, and he decided to go on YouTube and go through social media. Now, is that just a millennial approach, or the people that you're talking to and the youth that you're talking to maybe feel more comfortable talking to you via their mobile phone than maybe in a community center that you would have available to you? You know, maybe to rent space, you know, especially being a part in North Africa, you know, sorry, North America, definitely don't have community spaces in North Africa. They're missing. We need them. So yeah, you know, these types of spaces and resources are available for rent and can do you feel that you're more connected to them on the ground or online?
Hmm. That's an interesting question that you mentioned that. I think really also, I'm going to keep bragging here, but I think what really makes YLT so special also is we do both events and we do a lot of online stuff. Like we have a social media community, we have an online publication, all of that, where we put out content and are able to interact with people. But as I mentioned, we started as a youth initiative, and we started with events. So we started with the Wild Tea Cafe, where it's like you mentioned, we rent out spaces and we bring in people together. And we started having those events here in Toronto, in Canada, and the US and the UK. And people really loved it. So people, it's kind of a balance. I know where you're going with your question, and it's kind of a balance. Some topics are not too heavy, and people are are comfortable talking about them in person and even in public. And sometimes the topics are a little more sensitive, and so we actually do get a lot of DMs on the super sensitive stuff, where we can handle them pretty well that way. And it also depends on from one person to another. Some people are just more comfortable speaking out about things, and so they're, whether it can be like on Instagram's comment section or on like the virtual cafe that we have every Saturday.